Hi, if you've ever thought about putting a metal roof on your home or your commercial building, I want to help make that decision a little bit easier for you today. I'm going to talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of a steel roof, and then I'm going to talk about the two basic types of steel roofs. So, one of the good advantages is it's ideal for rainwater collection, because you don't have any granules or any debris that are coming off the roofing material itself getting into your gutters that you've got to then filter out before you put into your water collection bucket. They also, most steel roofs, steel roofing panels are class 4 impact rated, so they're going to stand up to the hail really well. The snow also will slide off of them, so if you live in an area where you get a lot of snow, it's ideal for that because the snow will slide off rather than sitting on your roof and adding a tremendous amount of added weight to it. Depending on the type of roofing panel you choose, they can be rated for wind actually up to 260 miles per hour. So they withstand high wind very well. They are seamless from top to bottom, meaning that there's one solid panel from the top of the roof, your ridge line, down to your gutter. So the only seams would be between the roofing panels themselves. They're actually cut to length when we order them, so there would be no seams from your ridge all the way down to your gutter edge, which helps to keep any leaks from happening. They are more energy efficient due to being more reflective than some other type of roofing materials. And once you're done with them and you have to replace that roof, they can actually be recycled and turned into other metal products or metal roofing panels again. Some of the disadvantages to a steel roof is it's more expensive in the short term. A lot of that cost savings you'll get back over time, but with the initial expense, it's more expensive than some other roofing types. It is a specific look. A lot of people really like the look of metal, and some people don't care for it too much. So that may be an advantage to you if you like that look, and if you're not too fond of the look of a metal roof, that would be a disadvantage. They may not be allowed in some historic areas. We had a client up in Lead here in South Dakota that actually had to go to some pretty extensive fighting with their historic district to allow them to put a metal roof on their home, but they were eventually able to, and we put a beautiful rustic rawhide finished standing seam roof, and they're incredibly happy with it. It's withstood several very large hailstorms, but that can be a disadvantage. If you're in a historic district, you may not be able to install a metal roof, and you may have to do some convincing to allow that district to have you put a metal roof on. In certain circumstances, they can be noisy when it's raining. There are ways to mitigate that for sure, but that can be an issue. We've heard that complaint a few times that a metal roof is noisy. You can hear the rain falling versus other roofing systems. And there is with certain insurance carriers, there's something called a cosmetic exclusion, meaning that if it's written into the policy that there's a cosmetic exclusion, then certain insurance companies may not cover to replace that steel roof if it does get hailed out. Now, there's ways around that, and we've successfully combated that with insurance companies, but that's something to keep in mind. If you're going to install a steel roof, you may want to check your policy and check with your insurance company and make sure that you don't have what's called a cosmetic exclusion. So that's a few of the advantages and disadvantages to a steel roof. So now I want to talk about the two basic types. There's a lot of different profiles and finishes and things like that, but there's two basic types, and one would be a hidden fastener, or also called a standing seam, which would be this one over here on the left here. And then the more common type would be this one right here, which would be considered an exposed fastener steel. So the differences between those is obviously in this panel right here. This is your basic exposed fastener steel. This one is called that because all of your fasteners, which are these little screws right here, which have a small rubber washer on them, which I'll talk about here in just a minute. Those are all exposed. When you're installing that type of roof, the exposed fastener steel, you're gonna put your fasteners right through the top of the metal. Now they have these rubber washers to prevent any leaks, but these rubber washers do wear out over time. I mean, they'll last, easily 10, 15 years, but eventually the sun will degrade the rubber just like it, degrades anything else. So the big difference, obviously, these fasteners go right through the face of it, and then the panels will just overlap, such as these panels will just lay over top of each other. So there's nothing holding them together other than some screws that will be put in those ribs, which also will be exposed. The other one, and my favorite, is called a standing seam or a hidden fastener. And it's called a standing seam just because this seam or the rib here is much higher than an exposed fastener type of steel. And these ribs will go anywhere from an inch to, you can get them 2 inches tall, depending on certain applications. If you're looking for more something that's going to stand up to water a little bit better, you might want a taller rib if you've got a lower pitched roof. So there's different different heights of the standing seam there, but this is would be considered a standing seam or a hidden fastener. And the reason that this is a hidden fastener is because rather than the screws being put into the face of it and exposed, what we would do is we'd use a clip system such as that, and then the screws would be put in there, and then this panel would lock over top of that, and that completely hides all of the screws, so you don't have to worry about the screws wearing out. There's no rubber washers on these screws. They're just a basic flathead screw because they're not exposed to the weather, so you don't need a washer. They're completely hidden. In a exposed fastener, you're going to have hundreds or thousands of fasteners that are exposed to the weather. Now, like I said, they've got the rubber washer on them, so they're designed to be out in the weather. They're designed to seal up, but anytime you put a hole in a roof, whether it's a sewer pipe coming through or a roof vent or the fasteners to hold the roof down, every fastener and every hole that you put in is a potential for a leak. So on something like this, depending on wind loads and where your roof is, you may put up to 1 fastener per square foot. So if you've got, a roof that's 3,000 square feet, you may have 3,000 fasteners or 3,000 holes in that metal to hold it down. And then on top of that, along your ridge, along your eave edge, and along your valley, you have more fasteners. So a 30 square or 3,000 square foot roof, you could easily have 4,000 fasteners exposed to the weather. Now it has its advantages. It's more cost effective than the standing seam roof, but there also is a downside to that too. This can only be installed on a 312 pitch or higher. This exposed fastener steel comes in 26 to 29 gauge from Bridger Steel, which is where we purchase all our steel from here locally in Blackhawk. And the higher number is thinner. So a 29 gauge steel is going to be thinner than a 26 gauge or a 24 gauge or 28 or whatever the case is. This also traditionally comes in 36 inches wide. This would be one full panel here. It's a little over, it's about 39 inches wide, but once you overlap the panels, you've got about 36 inches of coverage. Like I said, this one has the exposed fasteners with the neoprene or rubber washers to seal them up, but eventually those can and will wear out. So this one here can come in, this is actually my favorite color. This is called Copper Penny. We're doing a large roof in this exact panel right here. This is some leftovers that I pulled off of it, and this is by far my favorite color. I really like this Copper Penny color. But this is can be installed, depending on the profile, can be installed all the way down to a 112 pitch, which is a very low slope. Almost every residential house has greater than 112 pitch. But if you were going to put it on, you know, maybe a porch or an addition or a commercial building, this can be installed, not this particular profile, but a standing seam. It's actually called the mechanical lock. And these, when they overlap each other, they not only lock together, but then you run a seaming machine down and you fold them over. And so that's the profile. It's a standing seam profile that can be installed down to a 112 pitch. These also come in anywhere from 26 all the way to 22 gauge. So like I mentioned before, the lower the number, the thicker it is. This one actually is a 22 gauge. This is the thickest roofing steel that you can get. The client that we're doing this for was on, they just bought the house, but I believe the house was on its third or fourth asphalt roof. And so they didn't want to have to replace their roof again when it got hailed out. So they not only went with a standing seam roof, but they went with 22 gauge, which is the thickest roof that you can get in a steel. So this will withstand hail tremendously well. So it comes in 22 to 26 gauges. It comes anywhere from 11 to 17 inches wide. That's the width between the ribs here. This one I believe is 17 inches. So that's your actual coverage. And this one has what's called striations in it, which is these small little grooves, which we put in every one of our standing seam panels. What that does is it prevents something called oil canning, which you will see if this was a completely flat panel. These panels will expand and contract quite significantly in the sun when they heat up or when they cool down. So they'll actually oil can, and you'll see little ripples in these. So we get all of our panels with these striations ran into the panel themselves. So that allows it to stay just like this. You won't get any oil canning whatsoever in a panel like this. So this is the hidden fastener panel, and this is the exposed fastener panel. And I'll do another video here shortly explaining the advantages and disadvantages to each one. I went into it a little bit today, but I'll go into it more in depth in a later video, and also do a video explaining the advantages and disadvantages and differences between a steel roof and a more traditional asphalt shingle roof. Thanks for watching.